would like to congratulate you for coming this far, and I do hope that everything that we've discussed prior, from the prelim period to the midterm period, all of these things were never forgotten, and that all of these things will eventually help you to understand fully and to become aware of yourself. Now, in this period, in this last installment of the first semester in Understanding the Self, we shall be discussing managing and caring for the self. You already know the concept of the self from various perspectives, of course, because that's the lessons that we've discussed during the prelim term. And during the midterm period, we have unpacked yourself. Now, given all of that, now we will be deepening our lesson in such a way that it would become a lifelong lesson in all of you. So let us start managing and caring for the self. Now, the question is, are you aware that you can be able to become a better student? Now, and all of these things, actually can be learned. Yes, you heard me right. It is at this point that you would be learning to be a better student. But before that, let me ask you, what happens during learning? Were you, at one point of your life, were you even conscious? Or did you ever question yourselves, what happens when I learn, or do you learn? But of course, I know that you are learning. You learned something in the past and that you were looking forward to learn something in the future. But by definition, what is learning? Basically, this is a continuous process that commences at birth and continues until death. Learning is actually a cycle, because when you know about something, you deepen it, and then when you understand it in such a comprehensible, complex manner, what happens is that you will be questioning it sometime, or there would be another knowledge that would add up to your existing and prior knowledge, and the cycle continues and continues. It is present from birth until death, of course, and it is a process through which we use our experience to deal with new situations and to develop relationships. Of course, we needed to adopt on what is happening, and all of these things are actually considered learning. Okay, it involves, actually, no, it is not just about thinking. No, contrary dun sa alam ninyo that when we say learning, it is something to do with us just thinking, just a mental activity of thinking. But mind you, people, it conveys a much more complex definition because it entails the whole personality. No? When I say the whole personality of thinking, it actually includes senses, feelings, intuition, beliefs, values, and will. Now, first to be able to learn, syempre naman, kailangan unang-una, our senses would be accepting it. Na mararamdaman natin, papasok sa senses natin, no? Yun nga yung feelings, mararamdaman natin, and then we think of it because that's intuition, and then we believe that something is true, and of course, because we believe, we will be doing this into practice, and we will be taking these learnings now from the day that we've learned them until to the day that we tried or we unlearned, if that's the case. Now, whether we like it or not, many of our experiences in life provide us with learning opportunities from which we can choose whether or not to learn. Now, yes, meron po tayong kakayanan na ganyan, no? Pansinin ninyo paminsan, it's not every day that you appreciate all the lessons that you have, all the subjects that you have, no? And unconsciously, our minds would be dictating us, no, which one to remember and which one not to remember. Now, in the same manner, we also have this capability not to come to a point of choosing whether we would learn it or we would not learn it. No? Kasi minsan, may mga bagay na paulit-ulit tinuturo sa atin, paulit-ulit natin na-encounter, pero wala tayong natututunan. No? Simply because we don't want it. Halimbawa, si Ma'am CJ po, no, because you know that I am not a fan of numbers. Medyo delikado tayo sa math in that note. So for me, no, when I come to encounter certain numbers, nire-reject ko na siya kaagad, no. Ay, hindi ko ito matututunan simply because I really don't want to learn it. Ay, merong mga ganyang part na paminsan into learning and that's totally normal. Pero what's not normal is that kapag kino-close mo na lahat ng opportunities, no? For example, yan, ayoko nga ng math, no? That is also one consideration I got when I entered college kasi feeling ko yung psychology dati, walang masyadong math. Only to find out, meron pala kaming psychological statistics, which we will be using in preparation for our thesis writing. Well, of course, I don't have any other option but to accept the fact that I should learn psychological statistics simply because I needed it. Okay, so ganun po ang learning. Now, learning occurs when we are able to, of course, number one, to gain a mental or physical grasp of the subject. Now, when we come to know what happens, no, nalalaman natin, ano ba to? Ano ba yung idea na to? Ano yung sinasabi nito? Okay? Make sense of the subject. Second, make sense of a subject, event, or feeling by interpreting it into our own words or actions. No, when we accepted the fact that this subject exists, this thing exists, of course, ang susunod na dyan is that we should be able to interpret it into our own language, into our own understanding. No, kailangan ma-convey natin na in such a way that maiintindihan natin. Number three, we used our newly acquired knowledge in conjunction with skills and understandings we already possess. Yung bago nating natutunan or yung bagong lesson na na-encounter natin ay pwede natin idagdag or merong relationship doon sa dati nating knowledge with that subject or that thing. Next is that we do something with the knowledge or skill and take ownership to it. Let me just give you a very simple example, no, on how I will be able to translate learning, no, in your own state. No? Halimbawa, pag pinag-report kayo ng teacher, ako, pinag-report ko kayo. What happens? Number one, kailangan maging aware ka doon sa konsepto. No, halimbawa, ang pagre-report, ang i-report ninyo rather na topic has something to do with, let's say, cognitive psychology. You know that there is something about cognitive psychology. So that's number one. You grasp the subject. No, ano ba yung cognitive psychology? Ano yung definition? Ano yung history? Sino yung mga prominent personalities? Lahat po yan. Okay? And then you make sense of the subject by, of course, interpreting it into your own words. Of course, naaral mo na siya, yung konsepto ng cognitive psychology, and then you'll be asking yourself, paano mo kaya ito marirelate sa mga makikinig sa akin in such a note na maiintindihan nila ako? Because mind you people, you cannot tell something to anybody if you yourself don't understand it. Na kung hindi mo alam yung mga pasikot-sikot, kung hindi mo alam yung mga main arguments, mahirap yan. So it's important that ikaw muna yung nakaintindi, ikaw muna yung natuto bago mo itapon, bago mo i-report sa ibang tao. And then you use your newly acquired knowledge, no? So halimbawa yung cognitive psychology, i-relate mo siya, no? Paano ba ito naging iba sa general psychology? Of course, you will not be able to encounter cognitive psychology if you weren't acquainted with general psychology. So maglalagay ka ng linkage, no, on how you would be able to use it. And of course, you needed to give examples. So syempre, kapag nagbigay ka ng example, hindi dapat yung mga example na hindi talaga maiintindihan at walang relasyon doon sa mga i-discuss. And lastly, you do something for that new knowledge or skill and you take ownership for it. Halimbawa, gagawa ka ng PowerPoint presentation. Of course, when you crafted a very original PowerPoint presentation dealing with cognitive psychology, it's yours. When you do a video presentation of cognitive psychology, it's yours. When you discuss something, Of course, there are proper citation alongside with it, but because you are the one speaking, it automatically gives you that state of ownership. Now, and that's the time that learning becomes possible. Now, you learn, and then you are also letting other people to learn. Now, what are some key concepts into learning? Number one, people learn best when they are treated with respect and not talked down to or treated as ignorant. Very significant yan sa aming mga teachers, no? Because we are agents of education, because we are agents of learning, we should not, hindi dapat ang tingin namin sa mga estudyante namin ay walang alam. At hindi dapat mas mababa ang tingin namin, no? Because we are teaching certain lessons that of course ang goal naman is to uplift their individuality. Okay? Learning opportunities should, when possible, be linked to previous positive experience. So yung mga opportunities, learning opportunities, dapat ang agenda niyan, no, ay mag-link sa previous knowledge. However, hindi dahil sinabi ng previous knowledge, kailangan kasama doon yung negative experiences. Ang dapat mabuboost lang is the positive experiences. Okay? People learn best when physical environment is comfortable. Of course, hindi naman madaling matuto kapag maingay, kapag mainit, kapag siksikan, no? And primarily, of course, yan din yung reason kung bakit kailangan ng isang lugar ay very conducive for learning. No? Kasi kailangan comfortable para yung brain would eventually accept new knowledge, no? Yung brain mo is in condition para matanggap niya lahat ng stimulus na papasok sa'yo. It's important that there is interaction during learning. No? Well, of course, we can learn by just reading, by just watching, pero syempre mas matagal kasi yung memory, yung recall kapag merong facilitator, merong nagdi-discuss at naiintindihan mo. Okay? There should sometimes be rewards also na para lang ma-motivate, para lang ma-encourage, no? And kitang-kita naman yan, no, kung bakit kayo nag-aaral at bakit gusto ninyong matuto. Well, a part of it is that, syempre gusto mo makatapos ng pag-aaral, but a part of it also gives you the idea that gusto mo rin kasi magkaroon ng mataas na grades, kaya ka nag-aaral. Okay? Now, let us go to the psychology of how people learn. Now, and as far as general psychology is concerned, itong tatlong theories na i-discuss ko with you today are basically the three famous theories that exist in psychology when discussing the concept of learning. What are those three? Learning through classical conditioning, learning through operant conditioning, and learning through observation. So isa-isahin po natin. Classical conditioning, learning through classical conditioning. The theory of classical conditioning actually was proposed by Ian Pavlov. So the main argument, yung talagang definition of classical conditioning is that learning through association. A neutral stimulus that naturally and automatically triggers a response is paired with a neutral stimulus. Eventually, an association forms and previously mental stimulus becomes a conditioned stimulus that triggers a conditioned response. So classical conditioning, medyo complicated lang yung definition because there are certain stimulus being mentioned. Nandiyan yung neutral stimulus, unconditioned stimulus, and the conditioned stimulus. No? But to give you a simpler discussion, no, I'll be giving you the experiment done by Ian Pavlov na nag-trigger din para ma-decipher niya at ma-lay down niya yung theory of classical conditioning. No? Very much prominent yung experiment niya with a certain dog, a bell, and a dog food. No? So, before conditioning, ang neutral stimulus is the bell. No? And of course, the dog is there. And then, unconditioned stimulus is the dog food. Kasi wala ka naman pwedeng magawa sa dog food. So, during conditioning, there is this conditioning period wherein every time na mag-ring yung bell, i-ring ni Pavlov yung bell, after that ay mag-offer siya ng dog food, so magsasalivate yung dog. That is during conditioning. Kasi syempre, pag nakita na ng dog yung dog food, magsasalivate na siya because there is the intention to eat the dog food. And then after conditioning, what happens is that natutunan niya na every magre-ring yung bell na hawak ni Pavlov ay may lalabas na pagkain, may ibibigay na pagkain. So ano ang nangyari? Nagkaroon tayo ng conditioned stimulus that every time that the bell rings, kapag magre-ring yung bell, automatic nagsasalivate na yung aso kasi alam niya na papakainin na siya na may pagkain na. So yun po yung classical conditioning. There is a stimulus, magsisimula tayo sa neutral stimulus, tapos mag-e-end tayo sa isang conditioned stimulus. Okay? Next is learning through operant conditioning. Operant conditioning is proposed by B.F. Skinner. So in contrary with what Ian Pavlov has been telling through associations that we are actually learning, sabi naman ni B.F. Skinner, consequences of our actions plays a vital role in determining how and what we learn. So very much particular na siya that we learn because there are reinforcement and punishment. We learn because we are doing something. We learn because we have actions. So ano naman yung ginawang experiment ni B.F. Skinner para ma-detect yung operant conditioning? So ang ginamit naman niya dito, daga. So sa isang encapsulated box or sa isang room, naglagay siya doon syempre ng isang daga. Tapos may button doon, red and green button. And then meron doon maliit na compartment ng pagkain, tapos may isa pang button. So kung yung daga, dahil syempre gusto niyang kumain, wala siyang makitang pagkain, naobserbahan niya na that kapag yung green button, yung umilaw, tapos pinush niya yung isang button pa, lalabas yung pagkain. Pero nalaman din niya, na kapag yung red button, yung umilaw, tapos pinress niya yung isang button, nagtitrigger lang yon ng malakas na tunog, ng tunog na hindi niya gusto. So until such time na natutunan niya that kailangan green muna yung button, green muna yung umilaw, and then I'll push this button and then I'll be able to eat. Kapag red yung umilaw, tapos I push this button, maingay na sound ang lalabas. Mas-stress ako. So yun yung operant conditioning. We have actions. And then based on our actions, there are actually consequences. It's either a reward or a punishment that we learn. So kung dadalhin naman natin yan sa totoong buhay, halimbawa sa loob ng school, o kapag nagkaroon ka ng punishment, o halimbawa sa exam lang, usually chances are mas natatandaan talaga natin, mas natututunan natin yung mga bagay kung saan tayo ay nagkakamali. But of course, when we get highlighted or emphasized on a certain thing that we did, ay nagkakaroon ng reward. So definitely natututo ka na, ay dapat pala next time ganito. Okay? And lastly is learning through observation or observational learning from the term observe. Now this is actually proposed by Albert Bandura. It occurs by observing the actions and consequences of other people's behavior. Sa experiment naman ni Albert Bandura, kaya nag-theorize siya ng observational learning. Meron dalawang room na may mga bata at each room. Doon sa isang room, nagpapanood siya ng video wherein merong inflatable doll doon. Tapos yung mga matatandang dumadaan, sinusuntok yung inflatable doll. Sa kabilang room naman, pinakitang video doon ay merong inflatable doll. Tapos yung mga dumadaan, yung mga tao, hindi nila pinapansin yung inflatable doll. And then after that, given some time, pinalabas yung mga bata, merong nakita na inflatable doll. Nakita doon sa experiment na yon na yung mga nanood ng video kung saan sinasaktan, sinusuntok, tinatadyakan yung inflatable doll, ganun din ang ginagawa ng mga bata na nakapanood ng ganung video. Pero yung mga bata na hindi ganoon ang pinanood na video, hindi rin nila pinansin yung inflatable doll. And that's why, nag-conclude si Albert Bandura that actually our learnings are observed. Now, if you were to ask, ma'am, ano sa tatlong theory na to ang pinaka-okay para i-describe ang learning? Well, of course, itong tatlong theory ito, lahat po yan ay totoo. So I cannot decide for myself which one to choose because individually magkakaiba sila, individually meron din naman silang similarities in that in such a way that we are all learning. So for this discussion, we will just be stopping from there, and then on our next video presentation, I'll be discussing metacognition in the hope that you would be able to detect how can you self-regulate learning, no? And of course it's a cycle because our goal at this term is for you to be able to highlight ano yung goal na gusto mo para sa sarili mo, no? And of course for you to be able to manage and take care of yourself. Okay, so if you do have questions, you know where to reach me. And I hope and I pray that this pandemic be put into an end very, very soon. So we get back to our normal lives. Okay, but for the meantime, you stay safe, you keep safe, and God bless you all. Thank you very much and see you again.